comparing the carnivore diet with the vegan diet.
We've always been eating meat. That's the standard. We know that's good. Plant-based, that's the new intervention. You need to prove that's better. We've already established meat's good.
Yeah.
You need to prove that plants are better. So we don't have to, oh, well, you have to prove that meat. No. That's established. You're the new guy. Well, you can't even get basic nutrition from a vegan diet. Like there's simply nutrients that don't exist in plants, and so you have to supplement. If you have to.
So this is just, the pre-show. So, but we can cover anything we want to cover.
Oh, are they doing that thing where they cut, they put interesting stuff in the beginning? Okay, yeah. We'll let them start then.
But yeah, just to quickly, if you make a quick point, just, yeah.
I was just going to say, I want to know what his like baseline is for, we've already established that this works or this is healthy, right? Like, what have we established, right? We have, heart disease still the number one killer. We have plenty of chronic disease. What is he basing that? Is he just basing that on isotopes or the fact that there were cave drawings on cave walls? Like, what is he basing this like established idea of? And also there are plenty of groups of populations that were eating plants as well. They always like to say that we just started eating plants. That's not true. There's plenty. There's even I think Matthew Nagra talked about it, where there was a recent study about, like, it was an isotope study, and it showed a certain population where they ate 80% plants. So I just don't know what his baseline is for like what works.
And who cares as well what our ancestors ate when we have studies right now in the 21st century, the 20th century, looking at what we eat and the health outcomes in the setting that we are living in right now. So
yeah,
in his debate with Dr. Nagra, he referred to a very old book at some point as well, but he couldn't remember the book.
Yeah, it was just one page of like the anatomy of a person after like agriculture started.
Supplement, then by definition your diet is deficient, and that's obviously not what we evolved on. That's what fiber is, right? It's cellulose, and that's how they increase the fiber content in processed foods. They actually add sawdust to it. So there's dozens of products that just have added sawdust.
I do want to ask this. I know you probably mentioned it, but since we're kind of talking about fiber here, obviously, like, Lane Norton does love fiber, and he talks about the benefits that it's going to have long term, because he references the research that always shows that fiber has a positive effect on all-cause mortality. And when you take it out, it's like there's a negative effect to no fiber. So when you hear those people continue to reference the long-term studies when it comes to fiber, it makes you wonder, damn, well, should I just at least keep a little bit of it in just to be safe, since I don't know, like, if long-term carnivore is the better idea? Like, do you think that there's any argument for keeping a little bit of it in your diet just in case?
That was the same argument for cholesterol and sugar, actually. That was what Ansel Keys said, was that, whether or not cholesterol causes a problem.
Pause it for a second.
What's the big deal? What's the harm?
Sorry, I don't want to do too many stops, but they always take the attention away from the question at hand. He was asked about fiber, starts talking about cholesterol, Ansel Keys, going to bring them down a rabbit hole to confuse them. And it's a very a political move. What is it called? Is it, I don't know if it would be a red herring, but essentially he's distracting them from the main point and the main question. So yeah, that's just so annoying. Just answer the question.
You just cut it out, replace it with sugar, replace these calories with sugar, because you need these calories. So what do you replace fat calories with? You replace them with carb and sugar calories. That was the argument since like the 50s.
Yeah.
Was that cholesterol is bad, replace that with sugar. That was the argument. And they said, what's the harm? Why don't you just...
I don't, when he says sugar, I'm not sure who's just been saying eat, table sugar, if that's what he means by sugar, because it's very vague what he means.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure based on what I've seen, they said replace saturated fats with mono and polyunsaturated fats, and then have a diet filled with whole grains. So yeah, nobody's saying eat sugar. That's take out the saturated fat and just eat sugar. Again, it's like more of this oversimplification for like the layman person to not know the difference. They just take it at face value, and it's very dishonest.
And yeah, Ansel Keys, he did very comprehensive experimentation. He found, as you said, he was sort of the founder of the Mediterranean diet, which emphasizes not a diet based on sugar, a diet, uh, you know. So yeah, it's quite vague what he means by sugar, but yeah.
Just do it just in case, and he convinced a lot of people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I always have a problem with this whole all-cause mortality thing, because if you are, it doesn't matter what you ate for breakfast if you die in a
So he sort of completely
He didn't even answer the question. Yeah, he just completely moved on to something else.
Yeah, but maybe we'll touch back on it.
plane crash, right? So I mean, it's a bit funny. And when you look at epidemiological studies, there so many different factors that come in. They're called confounding factors. So many different things that could influence all these different outcomes, right? So someone who eats more fiber, is someone who you don't. That's a different group of people than it's just I specifically won't eat that.
Now,
most
correct
of
me
the
if
time,
I'm
people
wrong,
that are not
Patrick.
eating fiber are eating a
Just really weird because I keep hearing this where they always discredit epidemiology. But in epidemiological studies, they do control and adjust for these factors most of the time in like a study with good methodology. That's correct, right?
Right, yeah, there's in the debate between Dr. Nagra and Dr. Chafee, Dr. Nagra, he sort of pulled up a few studies which had very comprehensive adjustment models. And if you're going to make the claim that something's not being adjusted for, you should be able to explain what's not being adjusted for, because there's comprehensive adjustment models which adjust for all sorts of things, including, fruit and vegetable intake, exercise, age, smoking.
Yeah, he's making it sound like they do epidemiology or there's an epidemiological study, and then some of this, like, they don't control for people dying in plane crashes or something like that. Like, that's what he's making it sound like, and that's just not the case. If you actually dig into the methodology of most of these studies, or like the good peer-reviewed studies, they do control for and adjust for most, if not all, of those confounding factors.
Yeah. Keep on going.
bunch of processed garbage that doesn't have fiber, because you can't freeze processed foods with fiber in it. It gets all mushy and mealy and doesn't work out. So if you're freezing and refrigerating all these processed garbage that's just going out, these ready-made meals, they often don't have a lot of fiber. So is that
What is he
comparing
talking
apples and
about?
oranges, because you're comparing.
What is he talking about? There's plenty of frozen meals and like ready to eat meals that have plenty of fiber in them. There's like Indian dishes, there's Mediterranean dishes, I buy them all the time. So clearly he hasn't gone to the grocery store and looked at the plant-based section. There's plenty of fiber. I don't know what he's talking about.
And I'll also add that epidemiology includes things such as randomized controlled trials as well, or that when people sort of criticize epidemiology, they're more actually talking about observational research. And again, in the debate between Dr. Nagra and Dr. Chafee, Dr. Nagra, he pulled up there's a study which looks at the concordance between observational research and randomized controlled trials. And it was based on looking at, I think it was dietary intake. There was more than 90% concordance between the results from observational research and randomized controlled trials. And even when there's randomized controlled trials, they sort of then dismiss them.
Right. So what you're saying is, when you say that, you're saying that usually what we see in observational studies, they translate into, or they end up being a very similar result as to what we see in randomized controlled trials, right?
Correct. Yeah. And there's also randomized controlled trials which back up the findings, such as the recent twin study, which was looking at the cardiometabolic impacts, also weight, and then the code begins. So when it's a randomized controlled trial, there's more,
Yeah, it's just never good enough. They just move the goalposts over and over and over again. But for their diet, for their research, anecdotes are plenty. All you need is anecdotes. So yeah, it's interesting.
So there's just so much information and evidence pointing in one direction, and that their sort of cherry picking is just trying to dismiss all of this.
A group that eats more whole foods.
You think it's more of a healthy user bias?
100%. And but also, you know, you have to compare like to like, because we're not comparing those studies compare people eating a standard diet, which is arguably crap. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, with someone who's eating something else, anything else. I think anything else is probably going to be better, right?
So the whole point of adjustment is to get rid of these factors which he's talking about, and he still hasn't explained what confounders are not being adjusted for, which covariates. And the recent twin study, for example, it looked at a healthy omnivorous diet compared to a healthy vegan diet. And yeah, it's just being very vague and not really interacting with providing critique of the statistical models presented in the different papers or long-term cohorts.
And well, that's the thing, is like when you look at a healthy omnivorous diet and a healthy vegan diet, like in that twin study, you don't really see that big of a difference. Like the results are good, but it's not like, you know, you're going to see pretty good results for both. But to them, the thing is, I feel like his cope or his reply would be, well, they were eating plants that are trying to kill you in the healthy omnivorous diet, so it actually isn't healthy. I think they really want to see like a carnivore versus a plant-based diet or an omnivorous diet, but I know a lot of people don't want to do that. But that would be interesting to see. And I'm still waiting for, like, Sean Baker's mentioned it. I don't know if Chafee's mentioned it, but I'm still waiting to see these studies that they're conducting that have yet to be revealed. So,
but surely in the research, if meat is so protective as they're saying, people who eat more meat should be at lower risk after adjusting for these factors. But if anything, as Dr. Nagra showed in his reel, he made a recent reel where it's like a curve going like this, going upwards, and then suddenly when the risk is increasing, but when you just get rid of the plants, the risk just shoots down based on.
Oh my God, that's the best. So he always talks about that. I watch, like I said, I watch a lot of his older debates. I wish he debated more people. I guess he's like, I don't know if he gets a lot of requests, but yeah, he was talking, some guy was like, well, we haven't seen a diet only of meat. And Dr. Matthew Nagra, like you said, is like, okay, so the risk is going all the way up, you know, kind of, there's like a direct relation with
linear.
The risk. Yeah, linear. Yeah. He's like, okay, and then when you remove the plants, it just drops. Like they're like, that's what you would expect to see when you remove the plants. It's so funny, and just, it's a great point. That's just not what we'd expect. It doesn't make any, like, just based on the, like, an educated guess, it doesn't make any sense based on the research we have.
So if someone wants to be really parsimonious, so making the least number of assumptions, we would expect that if you're eating more meat and then you just remove the plants and eat more meat, you know, the risk will start to still keep on increasing rather than just suddenly shoot all the way down.
Yeah, but no, 100%.
It is not comparing an animal-based low fiber diet with a whatever high fiber diet. That is not the comparison. So it's comparing apples and oranges. I don't think you can make that comparison. Also, there's a ton of other factors that go into this. Dr. Baker talks about this, but a lot of these studies that show, that suggest that meat was harmful, say, oh, these people ate more meat and they had, higher all-cause mortality. Okay, well, people have been told for the last 40 years that red meat's going to kill you. And there's certain people, usually guys, just say, screw it. I like steak. I'm going to eat it. The people that have the, well, screw it attitude with steak are more likely to have a well, screw it attitude with, cigarettes and drinking, driving fast. They're more likely to die in a car accident. They're more likely to die in extreme sports. So that contributes to your all-cause mortality. Is that because they ate a steak that morning? Or is that because they jumped out of an airplane? I don't know. I think it's probably the airplane, right? And so,
yeah, I've not heard this one before, with the driving fast.
Yeah, no, it's that we've already touched on it a little bit, but that's the thing, is like he's acting as if these studies or these observational studies don't control and adjust for these outcomes, right? If they follow a person and they end up dying in a car accident, they're not just going to include, you know, that's not, they're going to adjust for that. So that's just, again, it's just like more dishonesty.
Yeah, I might increase the speed a little bit up to how fast can you watch it? Do you think 1.25 or 1.5?
I'm cool with whatever you're cool with.
Yeah, I'll put 1.25.
There's all those factors that come into it. I think that you have to look at things, comparing like to like. We don't have these epidemiological studies, even epidemiological studies that compare, a whole food plant-based diet and a whole food meat-based diet. We just don't have those, right?
Well, the twin study was that it was a whole food omnivorous. Maybe it wasn't high in, it was a healthy omnivorous diet and compared to a healthy, plant-based diet. So
no, but that's not the way that they think. They want a all meat carnivore based diet comparison. But the thing is, what's funny is now all of a sudden epidemiology is good. Like, you know how he just switched? He's like, we don't have studies comparing the diets. So if there were studies comparing the diets, then you would believe there was would you only believe this level of evidence if it suited your bias or if it suited the outcome you want? That's kind of what most of these people, they're kind of implying. They're saying, no, these studies, this evidence is poor. They don't control for this. They don't control for that. But if there was a study that came out for the carnivore diet or in favor of the carnivore diet, using that same level of evidence, they would blast it on social media. They would rub it in everyone's faces. And that's the thing is, it's just an inconsistency, right? Their line of what counts as evidence is completely inconsistent.
Now, their cherry picking normally is sometimes it is going to be based on studies. And why are they referring to epidemiological studies when they cherry pick if normally they're saying you cannot rely on them?
Right. Yeah, it's a complete inconsistency. I don't get it at all.
So if you're going to rule them out, just rule them out and just, only reference your one-page books from many years ago.
We do have, I'll talk about 2 studies on fiber, and I'll remember this one.
You got to think too, like our ancestors probably didn't have, IBS, Crohn's disease, gluten intolerances, or any of these things. Yeah. People like, from thousands of years ago when they primarily were living on meat. So I find it interesting in today's world that we have to find proof that we could eat that way when clearly we have eaten that way many times throughout history.
Very, very good point. And that's what I heard another clinician say. We've always been eating meat. That's the standard. We know that's good. Plant-based, that's the new intervention. You need to prove that's better.
Again, what you mentioned at the start of this episode is that what is the evidence that we prove that that's the standard, or that
what are they big? And also I like how Mark Bell, the guy who was on, who just said that are like, what is the evidence, or like, how do you know that cavemen didn't have IBS or didn't have these conditions? We didn't have any tracking. We didn't have any way of knowing that. Why would you assume that chronic disease, health conditions, whatever you want to look at, were better a million years ago? That seems counterintuitive just from a logical standpoint. That just seems completely counterintuitive.
There was a paleoanthropologist on Nutrition Made Simple, and he said that humans were mostly scavengers. But he's the guy who travels all around, and he said that, if these people really want to be ancestral, they should just be scavenging.
Yeah, like vultures.
Yeah. But then again, let's just refer to the health outcome data, which we have now.
We've already established meat's good.
Yeah.
You need to prove that plants are better. So we don't have to, you have to prove that meat. No. That's established. You're the new guy. As far as fiber, there's one intervention.
So much confidence in the way he said that.
Yeah. Trial that you really know about. It's not that great. So this is an actual interventional trial. It's not just epidemiological, study that can have a lot of different flaws in it. Some can be done very well. Others, when they correct for these factors. And that's another thing. Sorry, with the epidemiological studies looking at red meat.
Yeah, so he just admitted that when they correct for these factors, and yeah, most of the studies, the good studies, they've got been really comprehensively adjusted for, and so he has been unable so far to name what's not being adjusted for. It's just sort of dismissing it.
Yeah, it's like he's dismissing it based on the like potential for this to be an issue, which again is what they do with diet in general. He like dismisses plants based on like mechanistic speculation, based on like the potential for like lectins or something to be harmful. But when you actually look at the health outcomes, that doesn't seem to be an issue at all. So I don't know, why would you dismiss things based on the potential when you can just look at what actually happens in the health outcomes?
Meat, a lot of these things, or meat in general, they look at, they call different things meat that just are not meat. So they say that, well, since pizza toppings can sometimes be meat, therefore pizza's meat. So you say, well, I eat pizza 3 times a week. You eat pizza 3 times, you eat meat 3 times a week. Like, not really, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, these people are just playing games, really. And so there's an interventional trial with.
So Dr. Nagra, he made a recent reel on this. Perhaps maybe we can watch it sometime, where he, to do with, you know, when they say, it's the meat in, what's it, lasagna and stuff like this. You cannot compare that. So there was a paper which adjusted for this and still found that meat was a risk factor.
Yeah. Of course they did.
Fiber. 75 people, not a big study, but it's like the only interventional study we have on fiber. And they split them up into 4 groups. They all had GI issues. They all had sort of problems in you know.
Is it too fast, or can you track it?
No, I'm good. I can track it.
Yeah. If it's too fast for anyone in the chat, let us know, and we'll show. We'll slow down with the speed.
With their gut and their bowels and things like that. Not as far as like Crohn's and things like that, but they all had problems. And they split them up into groups that stayed the same amount of fiber, increased the fiber, or reduced the fiber, and then eliminated fiber. So those 4 groups. And wouldn't you know it,
I think this is the paper in his lecture, or they also talked about it in the debate. I think it's only maybe like 2,000 people in the study.
No, he said 75.
75.
Mm-hmm. He said he said it's 75 people. It's an intervention, and I actually looked at this study. Okay. The thing is, like, yes, it number one, it is a small amount of people. Number 2, he says they have pre-existing GI issues. So the thing is, like, if you have a pre-existing issue, which I don't think they discuss what the issue is from. They don't say the issue is from fiber. So if you have a pre-existing issue and you add or you eat a high amount of fiber, maybe that does cause irritation, or maybe that does cause flare-ups. Maybe it's good, depending on the condition, to reduce fiber intake. That doesn't mean that for every person on the planet, eating a high fiber or an adequate amount of fiber is harmful or doesn't lead to good health outcomes. You know, like, I feel like those two, it's a completely separate intervention.
Yeah, there can be fringe cases.
Yeah. The more fiber people had, the worse their gut issues got. The less fiber they had, the better the gut issues got. And people that eliminated fiber completely resolved their gut issues. Small study, but it was an interventional trial that actually showed some actual data. So, I mentioned that we don't have these epidemiological comparisons of whole food plant-based, whole food meat-based. But what we do have is a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, again, JAMA, published in 1931, looking at 2 African tribes that conveniently had nearly polar opposite diets and lived right next to each other. And so they intermarried. And so they were genetically very similar. Mm-hmm. One was the Maasai, which people know eat a lot of meat, drink milk, and drink blood. And the other one was the Akikiu, who had been displaced from their land and weren't able to really eat what they traditionally did, and actually went more to a more plant-based diet. So this is a vegan's dream, right? This is the middle of Africa. There's no pesticides. There's no industry sort of farming. This is whole food, plants, and tubers, and very little meat. And they compared and looked at the difference. They found massive health differences and developmental differences between the 2 groups. The Maasai adult men were on average 5 inches taller than the Akikiu, much more muscular, had better bone development, better teeth development. The Akikiu had multiple different problems with their development, bone density. They had different vitamin and mineral deficiencies, iron deficiencies. They were more likely to be anemic. They got sick much more easily, and they found a number of different sort of blood markers that were deficient. Maasai, they did not. They were very, very healthy. They did not really get sick. Didn't have these developmental issues. Didn't get cavities. Didn't have crowded teeth and smaller jaws, which the Akikiyu did, which actually been shown to be purely nutritional, really, just nutritional deficiencies, your jaw and teeth don't develop properly. And they tried interventions as well. And they tried just supplementing, because like vegans, vegetarians will say, well, you can get all the nutrients you need. You don't have to kill animals. Well, but you have to take supplements. And that's a fine argument. But then they go further to say, oh, actually, this is beneficial. This is the best way to eat. This is what we're supposed to be. It's like, we can't even get basic nutrition from a vegan diet. Like, there's simply nutrients that don't exist in plants that you have to supplement.
So I think this study they did discuss in the debate with Dr. Nagara, and it's not really a diet which vegans are advocating for. And he's going to go now towards the supplementation, which I think he feels that supplementation makes something inherently bad, which we'll see now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, let's look at the framing of, or like, look at how this is framed, right? You have a study from 1931 with 2 African tribes. Okay, we're talking about indigenous populations. What do we know about indigenous populations, right? They're lacking healthcare, they're lacking other helpful resources, and they're lacking food security, right? So if you have one African tribe that has access to a calorically dense foods like animal products, and one tribe that relies on whatever they can find plant-based food, it would make sense to me that, yes, when you have no supplementation, when you have a lack of food security, and you're eating whatever plants predominantly available to you, that, yeah, your health outcomes may be worse in that context, right? He doesn't discuss any details of the study. He doesn't discuss any other nuance to what happened. He just says, this is what they ate, these are the conclusions, right? And just from, without even having to go into the study, I could already come up with other reasons as to why the differences are there. So I just don't know why they are comparing these fringe cases or looking at these really like nuanced situations, when if we look at people who are eating a whole food plant-based diet, who do have access to healthcare, who do have food security, so they're not on the brink of starvation, and who do supplement, why aren't they looking at those health outcomes? They just want to focus on circumstances from the 1930s where people were on the verge of starvation and were eating tubers. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I saw someone else quote something similar, cite something similar. Dr. Paul Mason on Twitter, he cited a study also where it was children under eating, and they got improved health outcomes when given animal animal sourced calories. And again, it's people starving. Why are we looking at these cases to make an argument for why people cannot be healthy on a plant-based diet?
Yeah, honestly, from what I've seen from ex-vegans and like even my own experience, if you are not eating enough, you can, whatever symptoms you're experiencing, you can fix just by eating more most of the time, right? In these like when they say they had headaches and they were constantly hungry and they were weak, or they weren't feeling good, whatever. Like most of these symptoms are usually fixed just by upping caloric intake. So I don't know why people don't do that. And, I think in modern day, a lot of it is disordered eating, but clearly in this maybe African tribe scenario, it probably was because they didn't have access to food. So just really, again, it's like, you want to think that they're just unintelligent, but based on like these like carnivore dieters' track records, it seems like blatant dishonesty.
Supplement. If you have to supplement, then by definition your diet is deficient, and that's obviously not what we evolved on. So they found that supplementation.
So if you're supplementing, supplements still count as food, so your diet is no longer deficient.
Yeah, they are dietary supplements. It's part of your diet. It's in the name. So yeah, again, it's just more fear mongering.
It's something you ingest. So it's just, it'll be interesting if someone invented, something you could take to be, against anti-cancer, and whether Dr. Chafee would refuse to take it because it would mean that, I don't know what his argument would be.
No, I say this all the time with antibiotics, where somebody, like, imagine somebody being like, well, if you can't fight off the bacteria or the virus in your body, then you are weak as a human. Okay, you're gonna let hundreds of thousands of people die instead of just giving them an antibiotic that we've developed. Like, what are you talking about? What is this like? It's like more of this like alpha man, well, if you have to take a pill, you're a weak little soy boy. It's like, I'm just gonna take the pill. It's not a big deal. We take pills and medicine for a whole host of reasons. So a dietary supplement is fine. It's better than killing and exploiting other animals.
Yeah, I don't know the stats on it, but a lot of animals in the animal exploitation industry are supplemented. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's primarily pigs and chickens, because the grass-fed cow, people always like to say that they produce B12 in their gut or through digestion. So it's mostly pigs and other animals. But still, yeah, if you are consuming pork and chicken and getting B12 that way, it's because they were supplemented.
And actually wasn't good enough either. They supplemented all these, these missing things that they were deficient in, and they found that didn't actually resolve their health issues. But when they started feeding them meat, it did.
Wait, I'm just going to listen back.
Nutrients that don't exist in plants, since you have to supplement. If you have to supplement, then by definition your diet is deficient, and that's obviously not what we evolved on. So they found that supplementation actually wasn't good enough either. They supplemented all these, these missing things that they were deficient in, and they found that didn't actually resolve their health issues. But when they started feeding them meat, it did. So there's more to it than just these vitamins and minerals. There's a lot of micronutrients, if you want to call it, that we haven't really even discovered yet that are in.
So he's
what? Yeah, go ahead.
So he's claiming that in these African tribe scenario, even when they gave them supplements, they still had health issues. Yeah, I'm open to pulling up the study. He said it was in the Journal of American, what do you say, JAMA? Journal of American Medicine or something?
Yeah, let's do you want to try and open it up, or?
Yeah. No, let's do it. Seriously, it's important, because if they're not going to link it, at least we could try and find it and review it, see if there's anything of value in it.
Are you looking for it?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were doing it. I got it.
I don't know. Do you remember the name of the paper?
Well, we know it's 1930s, and hold on, 1930s African.
It was Maasai, right?
It was Maasai, yep. And one other thing.
I don't know how to spell Okakiyu.
Yeah, it was JAMA. So it was JAMA.
I'm looking through his debate with Dr. Nagra, because I think he probably showed it.
And that's another thing, is like, when you don't even include the title, when you don't include anything about what you're referencing, it's a lot of work to find it. Like, it's not like you can just Google something related to what he's saying and just find it. So it's like more dishonesty. No, I'm not finding anything on the JAMA network.
think it's called The Physique and Health of Two African Tribes. Yeah, it's called The Physique and Health of Two African Tribes.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't find it. Where'd you find it?
I first opened up the debate that they had.
Oh, okay. You found it in the debate? Okay.
Well, he didn't actually share the title in the debate as far as I can. Well, maybe he did, but I couldn't see it. But I had to like look at his screenshot, and at the bottom of the paper it was there. But yeah, maybe I can share my screen. Just need to get Sci-Hub out. Yeah, I can't find the full paper for the moment. I can just see an abstract, or a preview. So I guess the key thing for people to know is that it's just, it's not sort of a diet which we're advocating for.
Yeah, and when you don't cite when you don't provide the title, you don't cite anything, we don't dig into it, it's hard to really know why they were experiencing what they were experiencing, what it was that they were experiencing. So it's just very vague, and it doesn't really help support his case at all. Because we have better research that shows that when you do supplement, deficiencies are what's what I'm looking for? You are no longer deficient, right? Supplements work very well.
And you can have even higher B12 status if you supplement.
Yeah.
Appropriately get fortified food. So it's not that important because it's already been covered in the debate with Dr. Nagra. So if anyone's interested, they can, go to that debate and have a look. It's towards the end.
In meat that we absolutely have to have, that we don't necessarily have a blood test for. Yeah, and so this was comparing like to like. This was comparing whole food, plant-based, whole food, meat-based, and there was a stark contrast. That's the only study we have, and I'm happy to do more. I think it's important to do more. I don't hang my hat on epidemiological studies that compare a plant-based intervention with a standard processed food garbage lifestyle. All you can get from that is what it shows. You have whole food diet is better than the standard diet. I agree with that. There's no problem there, but that doesn't translate to a plant-based diet versus a meat-based diet. Whole foods on each. That does not prove anything in that direction.
You ever watch the show Alone? You ever heard of it?
No.
They're just like out in the wilderness, and they're like, they got to survive, and it's like it's a survival show.
Yeah.
And this isn't like proof of anything, but it's not like they set those people up with Metamucil. You know what I mean? Like they don't have fiber, they don't have access to it. They have fibrous stuff they can get a hold of, berries and things like that. But the complaint and the reason why they get kicked off the show is because they lose too high of a percentage of their body weight.
Right.
They're only allowed to lose a certain amount of percentage, and then it gets to be too dangerous, and the weather gets cold and stuff like that, and they find less and less food, and they don't want people to starve and die from this TV show, so they'll helicopter them out of there when the time is appropriate. But they're not, they're losing the body weight because they can't find the two things that we really need that humans live off of, which is protein and fats. Yeah. They just can't find animals anymore.
Yeah.
They can get berries and they get access to some stuff, but that stuff's not going to keep them alive.
Yeah. That's, I remember actually seeing a couple episodes of that. And a lot of them did say that it was just like, you need fat. Like this is really high fat. I'm going to store this in this jar. And that's really what's going to keep me. Is like, I get this fat. And that some guy, I think he had like a Wolverine or something, broke into his stores and just ate all the fat stores that he had, just went straight for the fat. We see this in other sorts of things.
The guy ended up killing the Wolverine, by the way, which is like the coolest part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got him like a couple days later. He's like, I think this is the same one. Son of a bitch.
Spit it up. That was the thing too. Like, if you look at the accounts of like Lewis and Clark going across America, hundreds of years ago, they talk about that. They talk about how important fat was. You had to get enough fat. So they were hungry.
Always hundreds of years ago.
And you know what's interesting? Because I don't think he even realized what he conceded earlier. He said that compared to a standard American diet, plant-based diets are better, right? Have better health outcomes. He's not arguing that. So I guess his thing is, because his whole thing is plants are trying to kill you. But he also just said that plant-based diets lead to better health outcomes than standard American diets. The thing is, we know that even on a standard American diet, unless you're morbidly obese, you can live a pretty long time. Like, even on a standard American diet, people are living into their 60s, 70s, whatever it is. So if a plant-based diet is better than that, right, based on his own words, we can assume there's less chronic disease. People are most likely, again, when you control for airplane accidents, people are going to live longer. So that's good enough. Like, when we factor in the moral argument of, okay, we are exploiting and killing billions of animals each year when we don't have to. He just conceded that plant-based diets are better than the standard American diet. That's good enough for me. Like, we could stop there. Like, I don't, especially when we don't have research on carnivore diet. Why would we even explore that when there's the exploitation and killing of animals involved?
Exactly, and there's so many factors which can influence health, and diet is just one of them. And overall, it doesn't play the biggest role when you take into account everything, because there's genetics as well. So as long as you can just be healthy and live a reasonable life, I would say that morally, this would be the option. If the other options, if you can get similar health outcomes without having to pay for the commodification, exploitation of sentient beings.
Yeah, and if plants are trying to kill you, then why does he admit, in his own words, that plant-based diets are better than the standard American diet? The standard American diet does include, maybe he would say it includes more processed plants, but the standard American diet does include a lot of meat. It does include less plants, like less vegetables, less fruits. There's a lot of processed grains and stuff. But again, if he's admitting that a diet comprised of only plants is better than a standard American diet, he's just kind of contradicting his own speculation that plants are trying to kill you. So I don't get it. I don't understand. They're just, the inconsistency with these people it's just all over the place.
He also did mention, I think, in the debate that a lot of it is just hyperbolic.
Oh, like for entertainment purposes. Yeah, for entertainment purposes.
And fishing, things like that. But they were saying that, and they fed all those were the organs and leaner cuts to the dogs, and it was really important for the people that have the fat. That's what kept them surviving. The people that weren't able to get enough fat, those are the guys who died.
Fiber has to be like a pretty new thing, especially in the amount and the tune, like that I think it's what suggested that they say you get like 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day or something like that. It's like, how the fuck would anyone ever get that?
Yeah, dude, I just eat some stick.
I've seen some studies which suggest our ancestors ate way more fiber than 20, 30 grams, up, towards 80 grams I've seen. But again, it's, yeah.
No, I mean, and that makes sense because, like, I think a lot of the reasons why we don't have a lot of fiber in our diet, I'm saying as a whole, is because of processed foods. Even, like, if we're talking about cavemen, clearly there were no processed foods, right? So whatever plants they did eat were presumably going to be very high in fiber, right? Tubers, fruits, whatever else. So yeah, I mean, that would make sense to me. I get in eating processed, because I do eat like processed foods, even eating my diet, I get like 70 grams of fiber, 60 grams of fiber a day. So I can't imagine if I just ate like whatever I could find, I'm sure it would be high in fiber as well.
Yeah. And I also want to add that fiber is something which you can live without. So it's not something which is essential for the body, but in terms of longevity, this is where you see in the research the benefits from fiber, because it can, the proposed mechanism is that fiber in the gut is fermented to produce short-chain fatty acids, which exert health benefits in the body. So fiber is more of a long game. It's a long-term game. It's to think about healthy aging, longevity, decreasing the risk of chronic diseases, which take a long time to develop.
Well, same thing with heart disease, right? That's what I think people forget. Like, you don't really see, unless you're like really unhealthy or genetically predisposed, you don't really see people having heart attacks until they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Like, saying that saturated fat is not a big deal. Okay, yeah, maybe right now when you're 30, but it's the what is it? It's the prolonged exposure, right? It's I forgot the way Matthew Nagra words it, but it's a high LDL over time, right? It's not just like 2 weeks of having high cholesterol. It's long-term exposure, which builds up plaque and leads to heart disease.
Yeah. And there was the last study that I saw on fiber was massive. It was like more than 3.5 million participants, and it found decreased risk for all-cause mortality, cardiovascular-related mortality, cancer-related mortality between, more than 20%, 22% for cancer-related mortality, 26% for cardiovascular-related disease-related mortality, and 23% for reducing the risk of death. So it's just so consistent.
But did they control for airplane crashes? Did they control for high-speed race car driving?
Yeah, Dr. Chafee would need to provide an argument as to, that being linearly correlated with increased meat consumption. And then if that's the case, then the statisticians would need to adjust for that in the model.
That's a great point. He's saying that as if that's a given. Where's the evidence that people who do consume more red meat drive faster or get in plane crashes more? Or, that's a great point. Yeah, he hasn't even provided evidence for that claim. Like, he just kind of stacks claim after claim after claim to the point where you even forget, like, what the original... This whole start, he went into all of this just because the guy asked him, hey, what do you think about the evidence, that showing fiber is beneficial? And he went on this long tangent that has really nothing to do with fiber.
Yeah, I think it would be more reasonable to just assume that the risk of car crashes is evenly distributed in the population and not really based on how much meat someone eats.
I agree.
That's what fiber is, right? It's cellulose, and that's how they increase the fiber content in processed foods. They actually add sawdust to it. So there's dozens of products that just have added sawdust to it, and apparently this is an essential nutrient. Essential meaning that you will die without it. When did that happen? Like, it's essential. How? Like, it's first of all, it's not a nutrient because we cannot break it down. We cannot get anything from it. So we're not getting any nutrition from it. So it cannot be a nutrient.
So with the sawdust, he's probably talking about cellulose from wood pulp, and it's safe. So again, just look at it's more just an appeal to people sort of, I guess, fears. Appeal to nature or fears.
Yeah, he's just fear-mongering. Yeah, he's like, there's sawdust in the food. It's like, okay, but it's safe to consume and it leads to beneficial health outcomes, so who cares?
Yeah, do I care, right? And yes, I saw Paul Saladino. He had an interview where he was like, "I'll even eat poo if it will be healthy for me." So just look at the health outcomes, right? But I personally, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and like, to me, what I've seen some of these people eat. Look, I'll tell you one thing: I'll eat a bowl of sawdust before I eat a beef testicle. Like, I'll eat a bowl of sawdust before I eat a beating heart raw. Because some of these people, man, like Paul Saladino and like Liver King and like some of these people, I know Liver King's more of a spectacle, but still, I would rather eat sawdust with some soy milk than eat a cow testicle. No way. And that's not even because of the rights violation. That on top of that, it's just like, that's just sick. Like, I don't know how people can stomach these things.
It's already right there. It's misnamed. But also, there's entire civilizations alive right now that eat no fiber generationally, right? If that's essential, then that doesn't work. The Maasai, the Inuit, Native Australians. Obviously, all these peoples can incorporate into Western society and eat the same garbage we are. But traditionally, that's not what they ate. And people can say that, well, the Maasai, maybe they're eating some tubers, maybe the Australian Aborigines, or maybe they're eating some stuff as well. A lot of accounts will actually say that it's only when they're starving is when they eat that stuff. And when they have meat, they just eat meat. But you can't really argue with people living in the North Pole what they're eating, because there's no tubers, on these ice shelves that are just floating around the North Pole. They don't even have access to it. They don't have fiber. They poop just fine. And they people say, well, their average life expectancy is lower, like Maasai, it's like 60 years. It's like, yeah, do you know what their infant mortality rate is outside of a hospital? It's pretty high, right? So your average life expectancy from birth is going to go down if 3 out of 5 of your kids are dying in infancy, obviously. That doesn't speak to how old people live when they die of old age, right? They're fighting lions with sticks and winning half the time, right? So these guys are living, in a very different, atmosphere than we are, and they're doing extraordinarily well. You don't live in those, you cannot survive in those conditions if you're not thriving. You have to be extremely strong and robust, and they're doing very well without fiber. Fiber is not, it's again, like, we cannot break down fiber. We cannot process fiber. All animals that consume fibrous plants have the ability to, through the bacteria in their guts, break down fiber into fat and protein. The animal kingdom runs on fat and protein. Carnivores, because they eat animals with fat, and they go for the fat first. But also herbivores, because again, that's what they're absorbing. They're eating a bunch of fiber, but what they're absorbing is fat and protein. So a gorilla or a cow that's just eating leaves and grass, they still get 70 to 80% of their calories from fat, from the saturated fat that the bacteria are secreting as a byproduct of the fiber that they're eating. So the animal kingdom runs.
Is that even
on
true?
Fat and protein. And
he's saying that cows get 70 to 80% of their calories from saturated fat from the fiber. Is that even possible? Like, how would...
Let's have a look again.
Because they eat animals with fat, and they go for the fat first. Have the ability to, through the bacteria in their guts, break down fiber into fat and protein. The animal kingdom runs on fat and protein. Carnivores, because they eat animals with fat, and they go for the fat first. But also herbivores, because again, that's what they're absorbing. They're eating a bunch of fiber, but what they're absorbing is fat and protein. So a gorilla or a cow that's just eating leaves and grass, they still get 70 to 80% of their calories from fat, from the saturated fat that the bacteria are secreting as a byproduct of the fiber that they're
70 to 80% of their calories from fat, and then he says saturated fat that the bacteria is secreting. I don't know if that's true.
So fiber is a type of carbohydrate. It's like an indigestible carbohydrate. So if it's getting broken down, it'll be getting broken down
into carbs,
into simple sugar. So maybe there could be, it's possible. I don't know, unless there's some sort of conversion going on.
Yeah, because the claim that he's making is, even when you look at true herbivores, right? He's saying that he's implying that humans aren't true herbivores. He's saying when you look at true herbivores, when they consume, right, grass, leaves, things high in fiber, what happens is the fiber gets converted, or he said 70 to 80% of their calories come from the saturated fat that's secreted by the bacteria when fiber is broken down. That doesn't make any sense to me. And if there is data or if there is research showing that, I would love to see it. How would fiber be broken down or be converted to saturated fat? Something's just not making any sense to me at all. Because, is that making any sense to you at all?
Well, I'm just trying to have a look to see.
70 to 80% of cows' calories are coming from saturated fat.
I saw someone say, well, there's one page saying cattle, sheep, and goats have the ability to convert plant carbohydrates and proteins into available nutrients for human use.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure about this one, but yeah. In any case, back to what he was talking with the people living in the North Pole. It's he'll need to present some data that even if we grant that, I haven't looked at if they're having good longevity or not, but even if they did, those consuming more fiber could potentially have even better longevity. So it'll be important to look at the exposure of fiber, because even if someone's not consuming fiber, it could be possible that the population could have even better health outcomes if they consumed fiber. So it's not like just because they're not consuming fiber doesn't mean fiber is like healthy or can be health promoting.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's other factors, like you said, like they might be getting more exercise. They might be, in a caloric, like not over consuming calories. They might have genetic factors. So there's other factors that influence health besides just fiber. That doesn't mean that consuming fiber is going to be harmful to you or lead to worse health outcomes.
On fat and protein, and we are the only ones that have lost that. There was, I forget the guy's name, but he said that that humans are the only animals smart enough to make our own food and the only ones dumb enough to eat it.
I forget the guy's name, but this is what he said. Great, thank you. That is true scientific excellence.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, but I think we covered that pretty well.
Yeah, like, honestly, to me, it's like, this is why the nutrition is not really interesting to me to argue. I prefer debating like ethics and morals, because if you have a person where 9 out of 10 claims are either they don't provide evidence or they're just blatant lies, I'm kind of good. Like, we could kind of dismiss it. We could kind of like just throw it out, because that's crazy. Like, I don't care about the one thing they say that might be true. What about the 9 things that they've lied about? That's a red flag to me. I don't know.
Now, the last point he made, I saw a link here saying ruminant stomachs have 4 compartments, and ruminant microbes ferment feeds and produce volatile fatty acids. So that point is possible what he said, but in any case,
that would be interesting. Yeah, I want to read into that. That's interesting.
He said break down. So it's the word use he used, because it will be fermentation, right? Because if you're breaking down carbs, it's like breaking down the chains, as I understand.
And the way he worded it, he said 70 to 80% of their calories are like coming from saturated fat. So he's wording it as if like a cow and a gorilla's like macronutrient composition, like their diet, is 80% saturated fat, that's just not true.
Because then you could just give them, saturated fat to eat, right? And presumably there'll be exactly the same health outcomes with that, which is not the case because there's fermentation or potentially going on.
Yeah.
So, do you want to call it the end of the stream, or do you want to maybe look at some short videos I've got saved? How much time do you have?
I've got time, man. If you've got time, I've got time.
So I guess we can either start watching a new video, or we can just look at some reels. What would Vegan Post Milton is writing something actually. Sorry for derailing the conversation, but is there any truth to the claim that someone who's not eating carbs doesn't need vitamin C?
I've asked this, Vegan Postmortem. I've asked carnivores in the comments. I've asked anybody to send me evidence for this, right? Because they say they get vitamins. There's enough vitamin C. So the claim, if I'm not mistaken, is that when you're not consuming carbs, your requirement for vitamin C is very, very low. And apparently there's enough vitamin C in animal products or in meat that you don't end up deficient. So, yeah, I've asked people to provide evidence. No one's ever been able to provide any type of peer-reviewed study, because to me, that's very interesting, because we've all heard of scurvy, right? We know it's a thing. We know vitamin C is essential. So, I don't know. Yeah, no one's ever provided evidence for that. So, I don't know. Maybe Patrick knows.
Yeah, I just know that Sean Baker has talked about this, where he's like, when you eat carbohydrates, your vitamin C requirements go up, because I think he said something about a transporter or something like this. It requires vitamin C, if I'm not mistaken, to move glucose. But yeah, I don't really know much about this one, but yeah.
It should be it's very simple. You make a claim, cite the source where the claim is coming from. That's it, right? Unless it's something philosophical, or unless you're having a casual conversation and you're just speaking off the dome. If you're making a video where you can plan everything out, make a claim, cite the source. That's it. Just like in essays, we learned this is the first thing you learn in high school. If you don't cite your sources on your paper, you lose points because it's essential. You can't just make things up.
Yeah, I think I also saw the carnivores a few maybe months ago. They're also saying that vitamin A is not essential as well because it's very high in the liver. So, like, if you too much liver, apparently, some cases that produce vitamin A toxicity.
Oh, Patrick, sorry, your audio went out. I think something with the headphones. It sounds like muffled.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
No?
Perfect.
Is it still muffled or not?
No, you're good.
So I was saying that there was a moment where the carnivore community was saying that vitamin A is not essential because it's very high in the liver. So to get around, like, it's very high in the liver, and it can, if you're eating too much liver, it can induce vitamin A toxicity. So to get around this, they sort of were for a moment claiming that
don't eat it.
You skip the liver because vitamin A is not essential.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
But again, it's very important to track who the claim is with, right? Who's making the claim and who's got the burden of proof. And yeah, we cannot just, it's good to also just check these claims yourself, but they need to provide some evidence which we can at least look at, right?
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is, like, my channel mainly focuses on, philosophy and vegan philosophy surrounding veganism and, the moral position of veganism. So if you're going to come in the comments and be like, well, vegan diet will kill you, it's like, okay, what's that evidence based off? Like, just provide a claim. I'm not a nutritional research channel. I don't specialize in this. So, but if you have some evidence, I would love to see it. I mean, I've been vegan, eating a plant-based diet for 7 years. There are plenty of other people who do it if we're going to play anecdotes. So just provide evidence. That's all.